Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Rom Damico. Rom Damico is a transformational catalyst, and you can find out more about Rom Damico and his wonderful work at his website, rom-damico.com. Welcome, Rom Damico.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Now, Rom Damico, what do we mean when we use the term frequency work, and what is the science behind it?
There's actually quite a bit of science associated with frequencies in general. The easiest way to explain frequency work is it's the act of consciously or willfully being able to adjust the dynamics of how energy flows around and within the physiology. And there's a significant amount of science around frequencies and how our systems carry frequencies. If you look at our organs, each and every organ, all of our different endocrine glands, different cells, different tissues, have their own unique frequency signature. Now, a frequency signature is a range and a rate of waves of energy that determine the integrity through which the molecules are able to bond and align and move forward. There's a really interesting device called a cymatics. It's called a cymatic scope. And what they do is it's a plate. They'll put a solution on it or they'll put sand on it. And then they'll put a hertz frequency into it. And what they find is that it will begin to make very specific shapes, no matter how many times you adjust the frequency from something back to it again, it'll hold a very specific vibrational pattern. And quite often they come out in the form of geometrics. That's one of the indicators that I love using for people to help them understand that frequencies are very real pattern generators. They're not just waves that oscillate or vacillate. So within the dynamics, there is so much associated with it. Like there's a institute called the Heart Math Institute. They have been doing frequency work and working with the energetics of these things for almost 30 years at this point. Another one was an oncologist, Mitch Gaynor, who has recently passed. He very much got into sound therapy and the vibrations as well as the frequency ranges that would help facilitate creating an environment to help people heal. So there's quite a bit of data out there associated with frequencies and how to utilize them in a way that helps bring us back into alignment, because we get distorted so incredibly easily, mostly because we don't know how to hold our core integrity. But if we were to focus on being able to bring ourselves back to that, I call it that center point. Some people call it that 0 point. If we can bring ourselves back to that with regularity before we make any decision, we're aligned at that particular point. All of our frequencies are in harmony within our being. And then all of us is on board with our decision. But if we're scattered all over the place, it's very difficult to bring together something cohesive. Frequencies operate through cohesion, not binding, but within a dynamic range that they operate to create a dynamic expression, which is us, because we are a dynamic being. We're not stagnant.
Right. Now, here at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, one of the things that I'm always explaining to our audience is that illness is slowed down vibration. And we've all had that experience, like when you have a cold, you feel like you can hardly get out of bed. Or if you've gone to a nursing home, the energy is very slowed down, or a hospital, it's very slowed down. And healing happens when you literally lift your vibration, right? So that's another simple way to understand frequency work, right?
Very much so.
And, you know, another thing that I'm always explaining to my clients is that you're already a VIP. you're already a vibrational interference pattern. So just
Yeah,
like Ron and I are both really nice people, but we have unique energies, right?
absolutely.
And your energy, if you're in the audience, your frequency is actually unique to you, just like your thumbprint is, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
just like Ron Damico is talking about, you have a home frequency that's you.
Right.
That's why I, as a medical intuitive, I can tune into you wherever you are because in the world, because you're a unique frequency, right?
Exactly, because that's a dynamic that people really have a hard time grasping. You're tapping into that collective of frequencies that become your unique impression. And when you tap into it, it's, I don't necessarily even need to see the person. If I can connect through an individual and feel somebody, you give me their birth time, I can feel their point of origin, okay, that point of coalescing and when they began to form that consciousness through this physical world. And once I tap into that, I can feel where the alignments are, I can feel where the discord is. And then you begin to tap into what created the discord. But also for people, I find if you tap in to connect with what creates that harmonic expression of themselves, and you start growing that, that starts to eliminate the space for the discourse.
Yeah. And you and I are very much alike in that I don't need to see someone or
Yeah,
put my hands on them to know what's wrong or what or work to make them better.
absolutely.
Now, Ron D'Amico, we're all familiar with that feeling of walking into a room
Yeah,
and detecting a certain energy or frequency. Could
sure.
you please share your thoughts around this?
It's interesting because that's something I played with all of my life. When I was really young, I'd walk into a space of a family gathering and you could feel the room. It's similar. Feeling the energy dynamics in a room would be the equivalent of walking from a house that's perfectly climately controlled and the humidity and the dew point is at a really comfortable level. And then stepping outside to full out 100% humidity with a dew point at like 75. You're walking into a wall of density. Okay, it's heavy. If you're walking into a room that has a heavy focal point, people are struggling, they're finding difficulties, they're complaining about everything. That dynamic becomes palpable. Just as palpable if you as you become more and more sensitive, just as palpable as feeling humidity in the space. Okay. Now you can acclimate to it by adjusting yourself to it, or you hold your integrity and you just sustain that presence while you're observing what the room is doing, and you let yourself relate with it, but you don't let yourself become distorted by it. Because we don't know often how to hold our core integrity, we align with the space that we happen to step into.
Right.
When you're talking about frequencies, you've got yours, I've got mine. One individuated, me individuated. We now are creating a relationship of a conversation of frequencies. So we've created a third entity of consciousness that we share. When you have a room full of people, even if they're not actively, verbally, or even through visual contact communicating with each other, their frequency dynamic is interacting with everybody else's frequency dynamics. And you begin to create a collective dynamic. Now, that dynamic will have its subtleties, but if there is a predominant focus, that's what will take over. And then everybody's mood starts to align with that. So if it's discourse, you go down the road of discourse. If it's people that are looking to be uplifted and more of them want to be uplifted than don't, the room eventually will get uplifted, or the people that choose not to be in that space because they don't want to uplift, they'll leave the space because they don't align with the frequency dynamics that are being created.
Right. And this is the principle behind feng shui, which is about, balancing the energy in the room. And people who are high in clairsentience, which is psychic feeling, which I talk about in my book, Unlimited Intuition Now, they're feelers. And feelers are really good at feeling how other people feel and sensing this energy in a room, right?
Yeah.
Now, of course, right now, during the coronavirus pandemic, a lot of people are having a hard time holding their center, right?
Yeah.
And they're going into, energetic alignment with the chaos.
Yes.
And right. So one of the things that Ron Damico is talking about in frequency work is about really learning how to stay in your own center and stay grounded in your own body and your own home frequency. And part of what we have to do in order to do that is to have a sense of, what does my home frequency actually feel like, right? So one of the ways that you can discover your home frequency is through meditation, right?
Yeah.
Or by practices of energy exercise such as Tai Chi, Qigong, or yoga, right? So we do movement that balances your energy, and at the end of that practice, you get a sense of, this is what I feel like when I'm healthy and I'm balanced, right?
Right. One of the things that I have people do is, we talk about balance because we don't know what that feels like for us. We do very well through mirroring. Okay. If we go out to nature, a tree knows what a tree is. It only knows itself as itself. If we're in a state of disarray, if we were to sit or stand with our back against a tree, feet on the ground, or just have your hands and feet on the ground, and you just focus on breathing with the intent to align with the purest aspect of who you are through every single breath. Mm-hmm. Because again, proximity, vibrational dynamics, the tree knows itself. It's not going to get distorted no matter what's going on around it. It just doesn't, unless you have physical influences. You now, because you can feel it knows how to be itself, as you choose that alignment with your breath and with that intent, your system will progressively choose to reorganize and reorientate itself. And as you do that with practice, what'll start happening is, and people get they sometimes get disappointed because you then, through choosing alignment, you stop making room for the imbalances to be your home base. So those things begin to surface, whatever they may be. They could be aches and pains, they could be emotional releases, they could be random thoughts, whatever it might be. But the more you go to that center point of calm, and you feel how it feels to align spirit to form as one unified presence, what begins to happen is you start to sense what that feeling is. And I love using the breath because you breathe all the time. So if you practice that breath and you get very adept at pulling yourself into alignment with one breath, every time you breathe, you're in a conversation. Somebody asks you a question. You breathe before you answer. You're unified, you're present, you're clear, you set your intent and you express. And that happens faster than the snap of a finger.
Right. Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought up breathing. During the coronavirus pandemic, I've now given away my book, The Little Book of Breath Work, for free to people in 13 countries. So if you're listening to this broadcast, send me an email, Catherine@CatherineCarrigan.com, and I'm happy to send you a copy of The Little Book of Breath Work. And there's a routine in there called the 8 minutes to inner peace. And you can cut anxiety usually in half in 8 minutes. And through your breath, you can find your home frequency. Yep. Now, one of the things we know, Ron Damico, I think that people say, you are the sum total of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, because we go into resonance with the people, we go into basically energetic harmony with the people that we spend the most time with. How can we find our home frequency when people around us are depressed or anxious or upset, as many people are during this coronavirus pandemic?
Well, it goes back to what I was talking about and what we've been talking about with what we do to bring ourselves to a center point. And like you had mentioned, I love breath. And I also love the idea of nature. Now, you can be in a city. You don't have to go to nature to remember how nature feels. If you have a plant in your house, you can just focus on the feeling of the plant knowing itself. If you have a tree that's outside your window, you can't go out there. You just feel yourself in alignment with that. As we breathe into that and we focus on that will to know our authentic, pure, awakened self. Even if we don't know what it is, because we are timing based being, not linear progressive time orientation, which we mechanized and created as a way of measuring human life, but we are timing based. So as we engage this breath, we're taking everything that we are, mind, body, spirit, emotions, the whole dynamic, and we're bringing it into a place of pristine alignment by choice. Even if we don't know what it is, our systems know that innate programming. And if we just give ourselves time to surrender into it, we begin to progressively align with it. And as we do that, then I tell people, one of the things you can do is engaging, breathing, and centering is great, but engage that through mundane tasks. Okay. So before you get out of bed, breathe, center, align. Focus on the task you're going to step into, get up and go do it. After you engage that task, breathe, center, align, and go into the next task. The more you practice that, the more practice you become at being completely centered.
Great suggestion, very practical. Now, Rom Damico, we're talking here about frequency healing.
Mhm.
Many people say that humans are like planetary systems emitting
Yes.
frequencies, and that we can only attract what we're actually broadcasting out. So it's the concept of like attract like, the law of attraction. Do you feel that's actually true?
I have a tendency to frame it this way. We draw to us what helps facilitate our innate focus. If our innate focus is to be the best we can be, we are going to draw into our lives everything that will help us not only grow that innate beauty, but also show us where it is we're carrying these things that we shouldn't be carrying. So we'll often bring up an opportunity to see where our greatest pains reside, our most imbalanced viewpoints of ourselves. We recognize all these through the things and the situations that come into our sphere of influence, because we attract to us what helps us become our next best version of ourselves. Now, if we choose to be a wholly distorted individual, then you are going to draw, because that is your intent, even if you don't think that's distorted, because your intent is to hold that focus for yourself, you will bring things into your life to perpetuate that dynamic. Whether it's you're a bully, whether you're a manipulator, whether you're a victim, whatever it may be, if you're somebody that's suffering from deep grief, if you can't get out of that pattern, and you need to, you will keep bringing grief into your life until you come out the other side of it. It's like yin yang. Something, you either walk through the fire or you get pushed out the other end of the fire. Because one way or another, we are innately designed to be harmonious.
Right. Now, we've been talking about different ways of finding our home frequency. Is our home frequency our divine blueprint, in your opinion?
Yes. It's that initial intent, that spark of our spirit that brings into form that holographic blueprint, or matrix as I call it. And from there, then all the subsequent energy systems are created in order for us to begin to make manifest these different energy dynamics, these different frequency ranges in something we perceive as matter. It's still all energy dynamics that are just operating in such a way that they have such a coalescent force that they're perceived as dense or matter.
Right.
And then to go back to one of the things you were mentioning when you're talking about planets, we are our own unique frequency. But within the dynamics, even if we hold and sustain who we are, planetary alignments have their very specific frequency ranges. You put them in alignment and proximity to each other, it creates an influence in their dynamic sphere of presence. And because we're close enough to them, we feel that. We can also feel those cosmic waves that occur, because we're going through this purification or evolutionary process at this point. So all of the movement is giving us that opportunity for our natural cosmic innate alignment to become our true self.
So we know for a fact that we're affected by the sun, I mean, who doesn't like a beautiful sunny day? And we're also affected by the moon and the different phases of the moon. So, for example, when women have irregularities with their menstrual cycle, one of the things they can do through natural healing is to open their windows at night and allow some moonlight in so they can go into energetic resonance with the moon. Now, what about the other planets? Do the other planets have frequency signatures? And if so, do the planetary movements or transits impact us at a human level?
Each and every celestial body, as I call them, they have their own unique signature. And it's like we were talking about how everything relates when you get into a room, okay, and the dynamic it creates. As they get closer into alignment in proximity to where this planet is, we are without question influenced by them. The most recent one that just came up is you had Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter all aligned and moving into alignment. And the amount of movement that it was creating was quite significant. Now, if you had gone back 20 years ago, most people wouldn't have felt that as much as they are now, because we are becoming, because there's so many people on this planet, we are starting to feel everybody's influence and we're becoming more sensitive to it. As a result of that sensitivity, because of the interconnectedness through the internet and the like, it's opening us to our innate potentiality through spirit dynamics. We are going to feel the planets at an even more intense level. Because if our sensitivity increases, we feel everything. It's not specific to a thing, it's specific to everything.
Right. And, you know, one of the things that I talk to my clients about, if you're a highly sensitive person, and, you know, Ron and I both have to be highly sensitive people in order to do what we do at the level we do it. When you're a highly sensitive person, you have to become strong enough to handle your sensitivity.
Exactly.
So being sensitive doesn't mean that you're a weeping willow and you're, you know, going here and fro with the wind. It means that you really have to practice finding your own frequency, grounding your energy into the earth, and having daily practices to stay in your center, right?
Yes. And it's really, I have a tendency to look at it from the standpoint of it's the more we become embracing of our spirit and we create that unified will, instead of having the will of our body, or, you know, that pain body egoic self, and the will of our spirit, we're moving in the direction of that unified presence and embodiment, as we would call it. As we move closer and closer to embodiment, our sensitivity levels increase, because our biological sensitivity must increase as the frequency range that we're able to carry and work within expand. We become more refined. But at the same time, the more embodied you are, the more stable you are within your physical form. So the grounding is you are really grounded and steadfast in your presence of yourself. That expands out in all directions. So as they say, as above, so below, as below, so above. You take that and you create a unified sphere of presence that is an anchoring of the earth, but also the anchoring of the heavens, if you will. And you bring that dynamic into one beautiful dance of presentation. Through that, everything is an opportunity to see who you are, what you wish to become, how you wish to express it, how you wish to refine it, how you wish to evolve, and how you wish to recreate it again. So it becomes an amazing dance. So as we choose to become our unified self, that creates a stability where you can feel all this stuff, but it doesn't mean you need to go roll around in the mud. You know, because we think, I feel this, because this is what a lot of people are taught. There's a mess over here. You're taught in your family, you need to go clean it up. But I didn't actively create this, but I got to go clean it up. Well, yeah, you contributed to it. Kind of, sort of, maybe, but let's work with this differently. But once we realize we don't have to be a cosmic janitor, but we can be a cosmic guide, we can be a cosmic presence, and then we can participate in the realignment and the readjustment to everything. Nothing needs to get cleaned up. It just needs to be reformatted.
Right. You know, a metaphor that I'm always using with my clients is be the lighthouse. So if you think about a lighthouse, it's grounded, it doesn't move, it
Yep.
doesn't go in and out with the tide, it doesn't
Right.
change whether there's a coronavirus pandemic or not. It's
Yeah.
grounded, it shines the light. And by shining the light, then everyone around it gets to find their place, right? And be illuminated, right?
Exactly.
Right? So it's the light that drives out the darkness, not the other way around.
Well, it's the interesting thing is, and I'm glad you brought this up because it's not about driving out the darkness. It's about shifting the intent in how the darkness is used. Because we're birthed from that place of no thing. We're birthed from that cosmic void. We come from that darkness. The darkness isn't a bad thing. It's the intent that distorts it. And you can have people that play within the light and are just as distorted in their intent, and they can wield it poorly. So it's the dance of intent and how we utilize the poles, if you will, or the dualistic framework in order to create the cleanest, purest rendition of what our spirit has the ability to be.
Now, Ron Damico, what is the Schumann resonance? I know that during the coronavirus pandemic, I've been watching their various websites where you
Yeah.
can actually track what's the Schumann resonance doing today. So, what exactly is the Schumann resonance?
The Schumann resonance is, and I actually had to look it up for the details of it, but it is a frequency that occurs as a result of solar influence, cosmic influence on our atmosphere, and then the Earth's surface. As any of it is affected, the Schumann resonance changes. If you look back 20 years ago, the Schumann resonance was going consistently down. It was diminishing. But as of late, with all of not only the cosmic movement that's taking place, the planetary transitions that are taking place, but you also have meaning the planets within the solar system, the celestial bodies. This planet has an awful lot of activity going on at a very strong emotional level. And that I've been noticing has been affecting our atmospheric conditions. Now, lightning strikes and high activity within the atmosphere contributes to the Schumann wave ups and downs. The more activity we have, the higher the frequency goes. There is so much kinetic activity that is exciting the particles that we register or read as Schumann. So it's going to be really fascinating to watch what happens as humanity begins to find its balance point, because the Schumann will still have its ups and downs, but it's going to find a truly stable resonant range that it'll operate in.
Right. And as I understand it, the base frequency of the Schumann resonance is about 7.83 hertz.
Yeah.
And the websites that I've been tracking, you know, it'll go up to 112, 120. And, you know, those of us who are highly sensitive, you know, this, you'll literally feel this. And again, we're talking about
Absolutely.
other planets. This is the Earth frequency. And
Right.
sometimes you may notice, gosh, I didn't sleep well last night. And you're like, well, nothing's really going on in my life. Well, you may be picking up on all the changes in the Schumann resonance, right?
Well, in all sincerity, it steps beyond a may. Everybody is affected by this at this point. Whether you want to believe it or not is a different story altogether. But, and you were talking about the spikes. I pulled up online. One of the more recent ones that I found was right around the first of the year, 158 hertz they registered it at. That's an insanely high vibrational pattern, especially when the Earth operates at such a, the Earth holds such a low resonant hum. And if that number is that high and we're already nervous, just imagine where your system is going to go if you don't know how to sustain your center point. That's why the dynamic of breathing and doing what you've been talking about is so beneficial, because the more you can hold that internal stable point, the easier it is to navigate it. You're still going to be affected by it, but it doesn't have to run you.
Right. And what I find is that, again, a lot of times what this may manifest in you is just feeling out of sorts,
Very much.
for no reason.
Yes.
And one of the things that I tell all of my clients right now is that if you're a sensitive person right now, you really need to be on your A game. So what do I mean by that? It means that you need to have, in my professional opinion as a medical intuitive healer, you need to have daily practices that help you return to your own home frequency. What does that look like? I begin every day with prayer and meditation. I practice yoga. I practice qigong. I walk in nature, right? So, what are some other practical things? You talked about breathing and returning to the breath, and I love the idea of the daily practices. You're
Yeah.
washing your dishes, right?
Yeah. It's, my family has gotten used to, when I was working at an office outside the house, I would come home. My first thing, let me clean the kitchen.
Mm,
I loved washing dishes. They're like, let us do it. I said, no, this is my meditative focal point. This is how I discharge, clear up my day. I recenter, organize, expand, and then come into my family dynamics. You know, anything, I love doing it through physical practices. I'm a very physical person. And if I can engage my body in a way that is a centering mechanism for me, I do really well, whether it's through very specific Tai Chi, Qigong type movements. I love exercising, doing all types of ballistic activities, weight training, strength training, balancing activities, whatever people would call it, CrossFit. But I engage it because I love using this body. And it's a way also in exercising and getting your body in shape, like what you were talking about, working the body at levels of operation that it's designed to increases your tolerance to all of the movement that's going on around you. If your biology frequency is weak, in other words, if your cells, your organs, and your glands are not operating properly, what happens is being in all of these energies actually weakens you because your cells don't have the constitutional integrity to hold their operational efficiencies. And because your center's off, then everything goes. So through the breath, walking in nature, mundane tasks, even just sitting in a room as time goes on, I would practice sitting in noise to be centered and grounded. I would not meditate with my eyes closed. I would do it with my eyes open. I learned to take the energy around me and harness it so I could use it more efficiently. What I ended up doing as an extreme, I would go to the mall during Christmas time and I would sit there, I would observe the movement and I would feel all the kineticness, but within the kinetic, I would focus on finding my stable point, my calm point. And it got to a point where I said, I could do sessions in Grand Central Station. It's not going to affect me one bit because I'll take the dynamics that are going on around me and I will find a way of utilizing it as part of the healing process.
right. And this is very much about bringing your energy into the present now.
Exactly.
Right? Doing what you're doing while you're doing it.
Exactly.
So not thinking about what am I going to do in 5 minutes or
Right.
whatever, or what happened yesterday or what's happening, with things outside yourself that you actually have no control over.
Right. And that's where when you bring yourself back to your breath, that 0 point or that center point of calm, you can allow yourself then through that to really get clear on what your center is. Just feel your past off to your left and then feel your future off to your right. And in that acknowledgement, you get to see what's pulling your attention. Because if you focus off to the left of your past, you'll see if there's any residue there. You'll notice it. You don't have to necessarily know what the details are. But what I find for people is if you can just acknowledge there's a pull or a leak, that's the beginnings of being able to release what causes that imbalance. And if you're yearning for the future because you don't want to be where you are here, you look at that and you just go, okay, I've got my GPS locator out there. It's still in my sphere of influence because it needs to be in order for me to be able to manifest this cleanly. So you just let it sit. But then you go, I'm here now. what is it that I need to become in order to help make manifest that will?
Mm.
And as we focus on realizing that every moment in time is an opportunity to become a better version of ourselves, a clearer version of ourselves, a cleaner version, a more aligned version, no matter what happens, everything is an opportunity to become a better version of you. If we can begin to walk into all situations of that nature, and we take something that disrupts us, it's showing us where the disruption already was. It's not disrupting us. It's showing us where the instability is. And if we can begin to recognize that, then we're less a prisoner to the dynamic and we're more grateful for what it showed us. As a result of that, then we can go clean up this little mess and we can gather our energy up and we have more of a presence here.
Right. And, you know, it's very easy to be at peace when you're in a forest and nothing's happening. And, you know, here we are, there's the coronavirus pandemic. It's actually happening. It's a real thing. The Schumann resonance has been, you know, exhibiting profound spikes, 10 times normal. And we're living in this, this energetic frequency. So it's an even greater challenge for people to find the center. But if you're in the audience and you notice, I've been feeling a lot of chaos. I've been having a lot of ups and downs.
Yep.
Well, realize that you're not the ups and downs, right? Ron Damico and I would agree. You're not this chaos, right? And the more that you just really practice dropping deeper and deeper into your own home frequency, the less affected you will be by these energetic spikes that are real and are actually happening, right?
Well, it's one of the things that I say to people is when you start feeling the influences of what's going on around you, who am I? How do I become aware of, honoring of, and attentive to what is going on within me so I can become a pure expression of my innate nature? And if we can start moving into every scenario from that state, honoring everything that comes in, rejecting none of it, but saying that doesn't really align with me, that's a truth. It exists. I'm not in rejection of it, because if I am, then I'm in rejection of myself in some way, shape, or form, because I don't like where I'm going. And we have a tendency to be incredibly judgmental of ourselves. But if we can be respectful of everything being an opportunity to get to know who we are, and then become that and embody it with ever increasing consistency, we then take control of our inner landscape. And control is nothing more than a regulatory mechanism. It isn't about power over anything. It's about regulating our own inner and outer balance. That's what control actually is. It is a tool of operational efficiency. So if we can operate that way and say, yes, I am choosing to be in control. I'm not tightening myself up. I'm just saying, oh, I'm regulating everything much more efficiently and I'm feeling more stable. I may be moving a little bit, but that's my way of oscillating and working with the vibrations that I'm around and feeling my relational dance with it. Now, this movement would be extreme, but that's what we all need to do. Realize you are a dynamic being. Peace is not a lack of dynamic. It's actually a different form of dynamic. There is action within the inaction. Therefore, it's dynamic in nature. It just is expressing itself in a very specific way. And if we can see that, and we can honor that we are coming forth in the best, most aligned way possible in any situation, then we feel better about ourselves within ourselves because we're being more truthful with who we are and how we become. And that changes everything.
Now, Rom Damico, one aspect of staying healthy is maintaining balanced circadian rhythm. So
Yes.
if you study acupuncture or acupressure, every acupuncture meridian is active for a certain period throughout the day. And in a 24-hour cycle, all the meridians will be active.
Yes.
And so if you have insomnia, for example, or if you have people who have night shifts, for example, night shift work, their circadian rhythms get out of balance.
Yes.
So how do all these earth changes that we're talking about affect our circadian rhythms, and how can what does a person need to do to stay more balanced with their own circadian rhythms during this time of increased change?
Okay, that's a really good question. The thing that I have people focus on is the recognition that they are on this planet. They are part of the dynamic in the way the world operates. The Earth's relationship with the moon, the Earth and the moon relationship with the sun, and i.e. the rest of the planets. To really hold your rhythm, focus always on who you are and what your alignment is. Do the best you can to get there. To get your rhythm in alignment with the Earth, periodically focus on getting up a little bit before the sunset. Feel the energy dynamic, whether you use your visual system to begin the process or not. Just know about where east is and then focus in that direction. Feel what begins to happen as you know the earth is about to crest and move up. Feel that dynamic change that begins to occur. And then periodically throughout the day, feel where the sun's position is, even if it's cloudy, feel its positioning in relationship to where you are. And as you do that, you will feel an energy dynamic change as it moves across the sky. Now, the interesting thing is, we can psychologically say, yes, I know this. But if you take the mind's referential dynamics out of it and you just feel it, you can feel the subtle changes of everything as it begins to happen and that transit takes place. And if you want, just focus on rise and set and you'll notice the difference. And then notice what happens after set, how your system wants to settle down. But because we're out of sequence, we go to things to keep our system stimulated and out of balance hormonally. But if we were to unplug from technology just for a day to feel it, you would be amazed at how quickly you start to feel where you're innately out of sequence. And the more you put some conscious effort into feeling your relationship, even periodically, it's noon. Okay, yep, I can feel everything in me is about ready to crest, and I'm going to start going into slowing down a little bit, but I can operate a little bit more efficiently over here. My coordination is better about this time of the day, and you just engage it. But you pay attention with practice, you get to know yourself within that dynamic. And it's really about getting to know your rhythms. I mean, there are base level rhythms that are true. They just are what they are. But each individual has their relational range within all of those dynamics. So if we would just take the time to watch it, pay attention where the moon is, pay attention to new and full if you want, but just notice we're at new moon, feel where that's at, full moon, feel how that felt. Over time, you'll notice the difference. That'll help you synchronize. The intent to do it will bring you into that synchronization. And the more you do it, you'll be able to pick it up consciously too.
Right. And I know in my healing work, I do specific healing work for circadian rhythms, and you identify where a person's out of balance and then do a general healing to bring the person's frequency back into balance.
Absolutely. Because there's an array of things that are part of that process, like you're talking about. You can have past life imbalances, you can have family lineage dynamics that they carry. It could be work environment that they're in, the way it's affecting them emotionally. There's an array of reasons for that imbalance. And yes, those can be plucked, but this is something they can do on their own, which I think is incredibly helpful.
Now, how important is it for a person to stay grounded to the earth while we're going through these massive shifts?
I think it's very important to maintain our relationship with the earth because the earth is representative of our physical form. But dynamically at the same time, we must also honor the etheric aspect. We must honor that spirit aspect. And in turn, then that dynamic essence of what this celestial body is that we call Gaia. We must honor its etheric nature because it has an organizational force. It may not have sentience, but it still has an organizational field that is energetic in nature, that is unique to it, that allows and makes manifest this physical presentation that we call Earth. So we want to honor both simultaneously. As we do, then we actually are able to know who we are within a relationship of our bodies and Earth. earth and our bodies. And the other thing is grounding into the earth, because no matter what we do to this earth, if we disappeared within about 100 years, most traces of all the distortions we created would be gone. I mean, you've got certain things that are going to take more time to correct and break down until they get back into the Earth's crust core, and then they get heated up and they break apart. But if we were to engage the frequencies of the Earth, just focus on the core of the Earth or its base frequency, you get to feel how it feels to hold steadfast in all of your basic operational programming. And if you plug into the earth, you get to feel that, you get to copy it, you get to remember what it is for you, and then you start taking over.
Wonderful suggestions. You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. Our guest today has been Rom Damico, transformational catalyst. You can find out more about Rom Damico and his wonderful work at his website, rom-damico.com. And remember, when you take the time to stay in your home frequency and ground your energy to the earth, you can stay calm, happy, and in your spiritual purpose, no matter what's going on around you. And that's when natural healing occurs. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.